Welcome back to WBAI 99.5 FM. With us on the line, we have Tony Catney. Tony Catney from Belfast has served a 16-year sentence as an Irish Republican prisoner. He's also a campaigner for a group, the Craigavon Two, as well as involvements for justice, a campaigner for a number of other cases that are now ongoing in north of Ireland. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Martin. Good to talk to you again.
Tony, what is the Craigavon Two?
The Craigavon Two are two people who were sentenced almost a year ago for the shooting of Constable Carl in Craigavon. The two people involved were, at the time, a 17-year-old John Paul Wooten and a 41-year-old and former Sinn Féin councillor, Brendan McConville. The circumstances around the case were just so obviously a miscarriage of justice that once the initial trial had taken place and both had been found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, family members and campaigners felt that they could not allow such a miscarriage of justice just carry forward into, for example, the courts of appeals without campaigning around the issue. I will go on to explain some of the issues once we get into it more, Martin.
Well, last week, I noticed on Irish television you had Jerry Conlon, who was one of the Guildford Four, the subject of the movie In the Name of the Father. You had somebody from the Birmingham Six, again, another famous miscarriage of justice. They were outside the Court of Appeal with family members of the Craigavon Two. Could you tell us what happened?
Yeah, even by the standards of British justice in Ireland, it shocked even Paddy Hill of the Birmingham Six and Jerry Conlon of the Guildford Four. The case against both men rested entirely on circumstantial evidence, the vast bulk of it coming from someone who was only known as Witness M. The circumstances of Witness M were that he didn't even come forward to give evidence until 11 months after the incident had taken place. Then the evidence that he gave was literally torn apart in court due to the fact that the person, Witness M, has an eyesight problem, which means that he is short-sighted and couldn't have seen either of the two accused at the distance that he claimed he had seen them. Not only did his eyesight belie the fact that he could see them, but the description he gave of the attire that, for example, Brendan McConville was wearing was completely different from that which was retrieved from the car at the scene of the offence. So on Monday of this week, the first day of the appeal, it was brought out in court that a family member of Witness M had come forward to give evidence stating that what Witness M had said about his movements on the night were a tissue of lies, that as a family member he had the reputation of being unable to tell the truth, to the point that his family nickname was Walter Mitty, and that he kept making things up. This witness was then visited by the RUC, who forced their way into his house through his door, then verbally intimidated and threatened him, telling him that if he carried on and gave evidence to state that his family member was short-sighted and couldn't have been where he said he was on the night, that they would discredit him in court. Then, 24 hours later, they went back and arrested this new witness and held him for 48 hours, all of the time telling him that if he went to court, he would be discredited. So in this instance, not only were the state not prepared to allow evidence to go to court, but they actively went out of their way to subvert the course of justice, to the extent that the defence counsel have now asked that the matter needs to be investigated by someone other than the RUC. As a result of that, the three trial judges had no option but to adjourn the trial, which means that the appeal cannot take place until at least October. By October, the two men involved will have spent 4.5 years in prison, which is the equivalent of a 9-year sentence, and we are quite confident that on the basis of the evidence that they will be acquitted. So they will have done a 9-year sentence on nothing other than the word of a short-sighted eyewitness.
Okay. Tony, we want to ask you about a couple of other cases. There have been a number of other important legal developments this week, and we just want to go through those with you. First of all, there's been some further action in the case of Martin Corey and Marion Price. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, Martin and Marion are both former life sentence prisoners.
Right. Now, Tony, you know a little bit about licenses, don't you?
Yeah, I do indeed, Martin, unfortunately.
What does a license mean?
What it means is the terms of your license are that for the rest of your days, the Secretary of State can decide on what will be the terms of your imprisonment. At this moment in time, the terms of my imprisonment are sitting here with the ability to make this phone call. But if the Secretary of State decided tomorrow that she wanted to change those conditions, then she could do that at the stroke of a pen, which means that I could be put back into a prison, taken over to England and put in a prison in England. Almost anything that falls under her jurisdiction, she could do that because I'm a life sentence prisoner.
Would they have to reveal any evidence that they had against you, or what the reasons for bringing you back to prison? What would be the procedure for you to challenge that?
Well, there is no procedure for it to challenge it, first of all. And secondly, there is no judicial process whatsoever. The entire process is executive. So the Secretary of State doesn't have the answer to the Lord Chief Justice, to the Attorney General, to anyone. The Secretary of State can just make that decision arbitrarily. There is then no judicial process through which you can challenge it. All of the evidence that is given against you is given in secret. And you are allowed a legal representative to attend the hearing where this secret information will be given. However, the legal representative is not a legal representative of your choosing. The state chooses who the legal representative is, and then the legal representative is prohibited from informing you or anyone else what the reasons for your reincarceration are. Well, so in other words, a closed shop.
Well, I didn't understand. Suppose you were accused of, instead of being on the radio right now, calling from your home, let's say they accuse you of being at an IRA meeting right at this time in Dublin. How would you, obviously, if that was made known to you, you could bring in a broadcast to this radio. I could show the phone records to show that you were actually at home at this time. How would you be able to find that out? And how would you be able, you'd have indisputable proof that you were innocent. How would you be able to find that out, and how would you be able to challenge it?
You wouldn't. It would be completely impossible, because you would never be told that that's the reason why your license had been revoked in the first place. In other words, it is a completely secretive process that is non-judicial, that is completely executive. In other words, Martin Corey has now been in prison over 3 years, and to this moment, he has no idea what he is in prison for, or what any possible, no charges have ever been levelled against him. So technically, he is, for the past 3 years and a month, has been a political hostage, held at the whim of the Secretary of State by the British state.
Well, Martin Corey went to challenge this in Supreme Court. Could you tell us what happened this week in that attempt to give a legal challenge to the way in which he was being imprisoned?
Yeah, unfortunately, he has lost that challenge in that the secret procedure has been upheld. It is a clear example where the judicial process has absolutely no writ over the executive process. And certainly, in my opinion, Martin, the only thing that will make any difference with both Marion and Martin is feet on streets. People going out and protesting and saying, no, not in our name. This is a complete travesty of justice, and it needs to be ended now.
Okay. Marion Price has been before the parole commissioners. There has been that type of campaign in the United States. In fact, Sandy Boyer has been who was on this radio program, is one of the key figures in the campaign in the United States, as well as campaigning. You've been involved in it, and others across Ireland. When is she supposed to hear the result of the latest parole reevaluation?
She should get some word next week, within the next 5 or 6 days, Martin. And obviously, everybody is hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Marion's case, I suppose, is even more complicated than Martin's, in that Marion has been held for the entire period in isolation, because she was then the only female Republican prisoner and did not associate with the ordinary prisoners on the wings. She was held in isolation. As a result of that, both her physical and her psychological well-being suffered. So Marianne not only has lost her freedom, but is also in fairly urgent need of the type of respect that you will only get when you're with your own family and in your own home.
Okay.
It is a clear case of victimization by the British state, and how anyone can do that and claim that they have the right to call themselves a state, let alone a democracy, it just defies belief.
Lastly, we want to ask you, there was a development in the case of Brian Shivers yesterday. Brian was one of the two people who was originally charged with the killings of British troopers at Mazarine. Colin Duffy was previously acquitted. Brian Shivers was initially convicted, served time in prison, and then was put on for retrial. Could you tell us what happened with that case?
Yeah, and that was on Friday, just yesterday of this week, Martin. So the sort of week began with a roar with the Craigavon Two, and then ended with a bang with Brian Shivers. And what happened there is Brian Shivers was sentenced purely on forensic evidence. The forensic evidence around 3 matches. It was shown in the course of the appeal and then the retrial, because Brian had to go through 3 legal processes. That not only was the initial forensic examination wrong, but that it is quite likely that the initial forensic scientists lied on under oath about the DNA that was found at the car that allegedly was used in the shooting of Mazarine. The extent of that was, and Brian gave this in his defence, that the matches that were found at the scene could have been from any one of a number of people, and that there should be multiple samples of DNA on the matches. This wasn't the evidence that was given by the state and the prosecution at the initial trial. However, at the retrial and under close scrutiny from the defence barrister, it came out that in fact what Brian had been saying was the fact. There were multiple traces of DNA on the matches, which showed that it could not be tied to Brian Shivers. And as a result of that, the judge threw the entire case out. Now, Brian is also an MS sufferer who has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And they put Brian through all the rigours of imprisonment, of strip searching, of controlled movement. They held back his medication from him. They've done everything they could to make his life as hard as it possibly was. Only they have now been found out to have been the perpetrators of a crime, as opposed to the people who are upholding law and order. And what will happen over it? Absolutely nothing. That's the sort of two-tier system that we now have to live under in the north of Ireland.
And Tony, the last thing we want to mention, there was an agreement in August of 2010 to end the strip searching practice. You've mentioned it a couple of times. What is the current status of strip searching? Will that be ended at any time soon? Republican political prisoners in Maghaberry.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it will be ended anytime soon, Martin. What I would say, first of all, is that the morale among the prisoners in Maghaberry is very, very high at the moment. They know that they have the moral high ground on this issue, because the agreement that was brokered in 2010 was vouchsafed by independents rather than just the prison administration, and to that extent, they know that it is clear who it is are dragging their feet in terms of the implementation of the agreement. The people who are dragging their feet are the NIO and the executive up at Stormont. Primarily David Ford as the Minister for Justice, but the entire executive up at Stormont has the ability to end what has now become the completely discredited and archaic practice of strip searching and control movement. I mean, control movement within a secure block is completely unnecessary, as is strip searching between 2 secure units. I mean, if nothing else comes in, why would you want to strip search somebody? So will it end anytime soon? There doesn't seem to be a break coming anytime soon, but the prisoners are adamant that they will maintain their position until they have the implementation of the 2010 agreement.
Tony, why do you think the British prison officials at Maghaberry are strip searching and using this type of brutality against Republican prisoners?
As a form of control, pure and simple, as a form of control. We have now the ubiquitous situation right throughout the north of Ireland, where after 2000 and the introduction of the RIPA Act and the use of covert human resources, we have a parallel system of policing and imprisonment, where the people who look after Republicans are not answerable to either the judiciary, the executive, or anybody else here. They're answerable only to the NIO and, by extension, the Secretary of State. All other offences are dealt with in a completely different fashion. But because Republicans are subject to this more severe, more harsh parallel prison and policing regime, then Republicans will always be in the position where the state will try to control everything that they do and then use that control to try and break or criminalise the Republicanism.
All right, Tony, I want to thank you for bringing us up to date on all of these legal matters that are still forms of injustice within the north of Ireland.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you, Martin, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon with hopefully some more good news.
Well, hopefully it'd be good news about Marion Price in the immediate future.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. This is Martin Galvin again. If you're tuning in, you're wondering what happened to John McDonough's voice. It hasn't changed. Sandy Boyer's voice hasn't changed. I've been asked to stand in for them for this one program. So, again, don't call in to complain. Have me removed from the station. This is...